My debit card was declined at the pharmacy. I thought it was a machine error. The clerk tried again. Declined. Then she lowered her voice and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your account's under protective custody." Protective custody? I laughed, thinking she'd mixed me up with someone else. But when I checked my phone banking app, it said access restricted, court-appointed guardian required. Guardian? I didn't have a guardian. That was the moment I discovered my own daughter had declared me incompetent. She'd filed papers saying I had dementia, claimed I was unsafe managing finances, and the bank believed her. For 30 years, I ran our family hardware store, balanced every ledger, paid every bill on time. I wasn't confused. I was careful. But suddenly, my cards didn't work. My utilities were frozen, and my own money was locked under her name. I called the clinic listed on the paperwork. The doctor who diagnosed me, Dr. Harold Lynn, had moved to Florida 3 years ago. So who signed the form? Who forged his name? That was the question that started everything, and the answer almost destroyed us both. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I'm 72 years old, and this is my story. Before we continue, please tell me where you're watching from and subscribe to Never Too Old, a place proving that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the beginning. 3 months before that pharmacy visit, when my daughter first said, "Mom, you've been forgetting things lately." Summer had just ended, the air sharp with the smell of cut grass and something fading. My mornings were ordinary. 1 chipped mug of coffee, 2 slices of toast, 1 buttered, 1 plain because I liked options, and a crossword from Monday's paper. Routine kept me steady. Claire, my daughter, started visiting more often. At first I thought it was kindness. She brought muffins from the bakery near her office, said she just wanted to check in. We hadn't been close since her father died. She'd handled the estate back then, said it was too much paperwork for me while I grieved. I'd been grateful, but lately she watched me differently. When I misplaced my keys, she frowned. When I paused mid-sentence, she sighed. "Mom, you're forgetting things again," she said one morning as she shuffled through my mail. "I'm 72, Claire. I've earned the right to forget a word now and then." She smiled that soft, patronizing smile, the one you give a child trying to be brave. "I'm just worried, that's all." At first it was small. She asked for copies of my bills to make sure utilities weren't overcharging. She added her number at the pharmacy. She wanted to organize my pills into a weekly box, so it's easier. I told her I'd been taking those pills for 10 years without missing a dose. She said, "Humor me." And I did, because she was my daughter and because I still believed love and control couldn't live in the same sentence. Then one morning, my online banking locked me out. Password changed. I called support. After endless hold music, the representative said, "Mrs. Brooks, your daughter authorized an update for security purposes." Authorized? I didn't authorize anything. "Her name is listed as your financial proxy." My what? He apologized, said it was part of a safety program for senior clients. I hung up and called Claire. "Mom," she said gently, "you asked me to handle that after you had trouble logging in." "I never asked that." She laughed softly, like soothing a confused patient. "Maybe you don't remember. It's fine. I'm just trying to help." That night, I sat at my desk with a yellow legal pad, listing every change. Her name on my bank account, her number on my pharmacy file, her voice on my voicemail greeting. "I'm Claire, Eleanor's daughter. Please contact me first." My hand shook as I wrote. A week later, she came by with groceries. "Whole wheat bread," she said. "Better for your heart." She cleaned my fridge, rearranged my pantry, threw out half the food I'd just bought. Too much sodium. I watched her hands move through my kitchen like she owned it. I wanted to tell her to stop, but the words jammed in my throat. That night, my checkbook was gone. When I called, she admitted she'd taken it. "You shouldn't be writing checks anymore. You forget to record them." "Claire, give it back." "I'll handle the bills. It's easier." "It's not easier for me." "Mom," she said flatly, "you need to trust me." Then she hung up. 2 days later, a woman from Adult Protective Services called. Her voice was kind but rehearsed. "Mrs. Brooks, we received a wellness report about possible self-neglect. Can we schedule a home visit?" "Someone said I'm neglecting myself?" "It's standard. Probably a family concern." I knew immediately who. I said yes. The next morning, Carla arrived. Clipboard, polite smile, shoes that squeaked on my tile. She checked the stove, the locks, the bathroom rails. "Everything looks fine," she said. "Your daughter's just worried." "Worried or controlling?" Carla smiled thinly and wrote something down. "Sometimes it's both." When she left, I saw Claire's car idling across the street. She waved through the windshield, same careful smile. That weekend, I drove to the store myself. My card worked then. 2 days later, it didn't. At first, I blamed the bank again. Then my electric bill arrived, marked paid by proxy account. Proxy account. Hers. I began a secret notebook. Dates, times, every little mistake she corrected. Not because I thought anyone would believe me, but because I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. If I ever did forget, I wanted my own handwriting to remind me. Claire called nightly after that. "How was your day, Mom? Did you eat? Did you take your pills?" I answered carefully, like a student taking an exam she hadn't studied for. Then one evening I asked, "Claire, why are you treating me like I'm sick?" Her tone cooled. "Because you are." "What do you mean?" "Dr. Lynn said you're showing cognitive decline. You forget things, repeat yourself. It's dementia, early stage." The phone slid from my hand. Dr. Lynn hadn't seen me in years. He retired before the pandemic. So when did he examine me? That night, I left every light on. The next morning, I drove to his old clinic. A new receptionist looked puzzled when I asked for him. He moved to Florida 3 years ago. I showed her the printed report Claire had filed. Dr. Lynn's signature dated 2 months earlier. Her face went pale. "Ma'am, that's not real. That's not even our letterhead." Fear turned to anger. It was all a setup. The calls, the accounts, the signatures. She'd built a paper trail, making me look confused and dependent. And I'd handed her the evidence by trusting her. I poured a glass of water. My hand trembled. Not from age, but rage. If she thought she could steal my life, she'd misjudged me. Because I might be 72, but I was still her mother. The house felt smaller after that discovery, as if even the walls were listening. I sat at the kitchen table, the fake report spread out like an accusation. Dr. Lynn's neat printed name, a signature too perfect. He'd always looped his L, heavy ink that bled through. This one was clean, printed, almost digital. I opened my notebook, every call, every forgotten bill, and wrote at the top, "Proof of forgery." Then I called Claire. She answered on the first ring. "Mom, are you okay?" "No, we need to talk about this medical report." Silence. "Mom, you shouldn't be driving around." "Claire, the doctor you used moved to Florida 3 years ago." More silence. "You must be mistaken." "I called the clinic. They said it's fake." "I think you're confused," she insisted, voice gentle and deadly. The pity in her tone made my skin crawl. "Stop gaslighting me, Claire." "Mom, I'm protecting you. You don't know how bad you've gotten." "Bad?" "You forget bills, call me twice a day asking the same question." "That happened once because your bank number changed." She sighed. "I don't want to argue. Everything I'm doing is legal. The papers are filed. Just rest, okay?" Then she hung up. I stared at the phone until my coffee went cold. She'd said filed. That meant real court documents existed somewhere, and if they did, I needed to find them. By mid-morning, I was at the county records office. The clerk behind the glass was young, polite, and painfully slow. "I'm looking for any recent legal filings with my name on them." He typed, paused, then looked up. "Yes, ma'am. There's a petition for guardianship, filed 2 weeks ago by a Ms. Claire Brooks." He printed the document and slid it under the glass. My name. My address. Cognitive impairment. Moderate to severe. I read the line twice before the room started spinning. Attached were 2 affidavits, one from Dr. Lynn and another from a neighbor named Mary Simmons. Mary had moved to Arizona last year. She wasn't even in Illinois, so who had signed her name? I asked for copies of everything, paid the $7 fee, and walked out trembling. The sunlight felt wrong, the world too bright. People passed me carrying coffee cups and shopping bags, and I wanted to scream that my own daughter had declared me legally incapable of existing. At home, I spread the papers on the dining table. The fake doctor's report, the neighbor's forged affidavit, my own signature crooked and clumsy. The handwriting wasn't even close. I made tea just to have something to hold. Then I called the one person I trusted more than anyone else, Helen, my old co-worker from the store. She answered on the second ring. "Ellie, you okay?" "No," I said. "I think my daughter's trying to steal my life." Helen arrived an hour later, still wearing her gardening gloves. I showed her the papers. She read every line, jaw tightening. "This is fraud, Ellie. You need a lawyer." "I can't pay one. She locked my accounts." Helen leaned back, thinking. "Then we start without one. I know a reporter. Maybe he can help." Her voice was steady, but I could see the fear behind her eyes. Because when your own child calls the law on you, no amount of truth feels enough. That afternoon, Helen's friend, Paul, the freelance journalist, met us at the diner on Main Street. He looked barely 30, hair a little unkempt, but his eyes carried that stillness of someone who'd already seen too much. He ordered coffee, black, and said, "Helen tells me you've got a mess. Let's see it." I slid the papers across the table. He read silently for 5 full minutes, the kind of silence that fills a room until you forget to breathe. Then he looked up. "This isn't just a mess," he said. "This is a case." He explained how guardianship petitions work, how easy it is to get one approved if the paperwork looks official, especially with a doctor's note attached. Once approved, reversing it could take months, sometimes years. "People lose their homes before they get their rights back," he said. It chilled me. "I just want my life back," I whispered. "Then we start with proof. Find the real Dr. Lynn. Get him to confirm this report is fake. That's your first brick in the wall." It took me 2 days to track him down. 3 phone calls, 2 disconnected numbers, and 1 online clinic directory later, I found him in Clearwater, Florida. When he finally answered, his voice was warm and surprised. "Mrs. Brooks, I remember you. Cholesterol check, 2018, right?" "Yes," I said, relief making my voice tremble. "Doctor, I have to ask, did you sign a mental competency report for me this year?" "No, ma'am," he said gently. "I haven't practiced in Illinois since 2020. I swallowed hard. "Someone forged your signature. They're using it in court." There was a pause on the line, then a low, firm tone. "Email me the document. I'll confirm it's fake in writing." When his email came an hour later, I printed it and stapled it to the forged report. I labeled the folder in big block letters, "Proof." The next morning, I drove to Claire's house. Her red SUV was parked out front, the same one she'd bought with money I'd lent her after her divorce. I rang the doorbell twice. When she opened the door, her face softened like nothing had happened. "Mom, you shouldn't be driving without telling me." "I know about the forged report." Her smile faltered. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Dr. Lynn confirmed it. He sent me an email. He hasn't been in Illinois for 3 years. She blinked, face draining of color. Then she laughed lightly, almost convincing. "Mom, you're confused again." "Stop it," I said. "You forged a doctor's signature." "I was trying to protect you," she snapped suddenly, her voice cracking. "You've been forgetting things. You left the stove on last month." "I reheated soup." "You could have burned the house down." We were shouting now, mother and daughter across a lifetime of misunderstanding. Then she said something that froze me. "I didn't do this alone." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She glanced over her shoulder, and that's when I saw him. Mark, her ex-husband, sitting on the couch, arms folded, that smug half-smile I'd always hated. "Afternoon, Mrs. Brooks," he said coolly. "What are you doing here?" "Just helping Claire with some paperwork. Finances, court filings." His voice trailed, eyes gleaming. The way he said filings made my stomach turn. That's when I knew. He'd forged everything. He'd always been good with computers. He'd done it for her, or for himself. "You're both thieves," I whispered. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." I turned and walked out before either could stop me. She called after me, voice cracking, but I didn't turn around. I sat in my car, gripping the wheel until my hands stopped shaking. Somewhere between betrayal and shock, a new feeling crept in. Clarity. If they thought I was weak, they'd made a mistake. Now I had proof, and I wasn't done yet. That night, I called Paul. "I have everything," I said. "Dr. Lynn's email, the fake report, even the neighbor affidavit. She forged everything." He sounded impressed. "Good. Next, we find the judge who approved the guardianship. If the petition's already active, we need to freeze it before she moves your assets." "How?" "With exposure," he said. "Courts move faster when they know a reporter's watching." We made a plan. I'd send him scanned copies of every document. He'd start verifying each signature and timeline through public records. Before we hung up, he said softly, "You've got guts, Mrs. Brooks." I didn't feel brave, just cornered. 2 days later, a man in a gray suit knocked on my door. He held a large envelope. "Mrs. Brooks?" "Yes." He handed it to me, nodding curtly. "You've been served." Inside, guardianship hearing. County Court, March 14th, filed by Claire Brooks. My throat tightened. A hearing meant the papers were already accepted. It meant she wasn't backing down, she was doubling down. I called Helen immediately. She arrived in 40 minutes, face red with fury and worry. "She's lost her damn mind," Helen said. "You need a lawyer, not tomorrow, now." "I can't afford one. She's frozen my accounts." Helen reached into her purse and pulled out cash, crumpled but firm. "Then use mine. We're not letting her win." That night, I emailed Paul. He replied within minutes. "I know someone who takes elder fraud cases. Her name's Dana Cross. She's tough. I'll connect you." The next day, I met Dana at her office downtown. Small room, walls lined with files and framed degrees. She was younger than I expected. Late 30s, sharp eyes, no nonsense. She shook my hand firmly. "Tell me everything." I laid out the folder. Fake reports, Dr. Lynn's email, affidavits, all of it. She read silently, page by page, tapping a pen against her chin. Finally, she looked up. "You're right. This is criminal." "Can we stop her?" "Yes," Dana said. "But we'll have to move fast. Judges usually side with the petitioner in these guardianship cases. They assume family acts in good faith." "Claire doesn't know what that means." Dana nodded grimly. "I can see that." She pointed at the neighbor affidavit. "This Mary Simmons, where is she now?" "Arizona." "Good. We'll get her on video testimony. Dr. Lynn, too. If we can prove even one signature is fake, the entire petition collapses." She smiled faintly. "Mrs. Brooks, if I were your daughter, I'd start sweating." For the first time in months, I felt something flicker inside me. Hope. That night, I arrived home to find a letter taped to my front door. The envelope was thin, but the dread it carried was heavy. Inside, notice of power of attorney activation, filed by Claire Brooks. Effective immediately, she had the right to make decisions on behalf of the ward. The ward. That was me. I crumpled the letter in my hand. She wasn't waiting for the hearing. She was moving my life around like chess pieces. I tried to log into my email. Password incorrect. My phone plan. Suspended for verification. My car insurance auto pay. Canceled. She was cutting me off thread by thread. I called Dana in tears. "She's taking everything." Dana's tone was steady. "Breathe. This is intimidation. Don't react. Document every change. Time, date, what's affected. She's trying to make you look unstable before court. will use her own actions against her. So I did. Every call, every letter, every password reset went into my notebook. The entries multiplied like proof, stacked on proof, because that's what this had become, a war written in ink. A week later, Paul called with an update. He sounded grim. Your daughter filed everything under her ex-husband's email. The digital trail shows he uploaded the documents from his laptop. So Mark did it. Yes, that's digital forgery. It's prosecutable. He paused. Eleanor, I think he's after your money more than she is. I didn't know which hurt worse, that my daughter betrayed me, or that she'd let him use her to do it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window with a blanket staring at the empty street. In the silence, I could almost hear Claire as a child, her small voice calling from her bedroom after a nightmare. Mom, are you still there? I'd always answered back, yes, sweetheart, I'm here. But now, she was the nightmare. The day of the hearing came sooner than I expected. March 14th. I wore my best navy blazer, the one I hadn't touched since her father's funeral. Helen drove me to the courthouse. We parked near the steps, both of us too quiet. Inside, the waiting area smelled of carpet cleaner and fear. Claire sat across the aisle, Mark beside her, both dressed neatly as if for church. When she saw me, her face softened, not with love, but calculation. Dana leaned in. Let her speak first, she whispered. Then we burn it down with evidence. When the judge entered, we all stood. Her nameplate read, Haunter Judge Rosen, a woman with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen it all. Claire went first. Her voice was soft, rehearsed. She spoke of my forgetfulness, my confusion, my unsafe behavior. She cried at the right moments. Mark added his part, steady, persuasive, about slipped memory, financial disarray, and concerns for her safety. They painted me as a fragile woman lost in decline. Then it was Dana's turn. She stood with calm fire. Your Honor, my client may be 72, but she is sharp enough to recognize fraud when she sees it. She held up the forged report. This document, allegedly signed by Dr. Harold Lynn, is fabricated. Dr. Lynn has provided a sworn statement confirming his relocation to Florida in 2020. The judge's brows lifted. Dana went on. And this affidavit from Mary Simmons? We have her on video. She moved to Arizona last year. She never signed anything for the petitioner. She played the video on a tablet. Mary appeared, sunlight behind her, saying clearly, I never signed that. I wasn't even in Illinois. Mark shifted in his seat. Claire's face went pale. Dana slid my notebook forward. Your Honor, my client's so-called confusion produced this level of documentation. Dates, times, names, every event. Does that look like cognitive decline? The courtroom was silent. Even the judge took a long look before speaking. Ms. Brooks, she said to Claire, will reconvene once these claims are verified. The gavel struck once. Postponed. Outside the courtroom, Claire avoided my eyes. Mark muttered something to her and walked off. Dana gave me a thin, satisfied smile. That was a good first round. We rattled them. I should have felt relieved, but I didn't. Because deep down, I knew people like Mark didn't go quietly, and people like Claire, they didn't stop until they got what they wanted. 3 days after the postponed hearing, I woke to the soft metallic sound of my front door latch turning. The noise was too deliberate to be wind. I slipped on my robe, heart pounding. Claire? She stood in the hallway, clipboard in hand, a camera slung around her neck. Don't be alarmed, she said evenly. I'm just taking inventory for the court. For what? Your assets, furniture, jewelry, valuables. It's procedure while the petition is under review. She began walking through the living room, snapping photos. Sofa, bookshelf, even the cross-stitch on the wall that said, Home is earned. Get out of my house. Mom, please, she said, tone flat. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I grabbed the phone, hit speaker, and called Dana. "Record everything," Dana said. "She's violating boundaries before the ruling." Claire froze when she heard the lawyer's voice. Her mouth twitched, half guilt, half resentment. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. "You'll regret this." Then she left, door slamming hard enough to rattle the glass. The silence afterward felt thick, electrical. I stood there shaking, the air smelling faintly of her perfume, a ghost of authority she no longer had. That evening, another blow landed, an email from the utility company, payment overdue, service scheduled for disconnection. She'd canceled the auto pay again. It was the last lever of control she could pull. The next morning, I drove to the billing office and paid in cash. I told the clerk, "From now on, don't accept any account changes unless I sign in person." He nodded, typed a note into the computer, and slid the receipt toward me like an oath. After that, I trusted nothing. I checked the mailbox every hour. I photocopied every letter that arrived, bills, notices, junk mail, anything with my name. The binder thickened until it looked like a case file. Late Tuesday, Paul called again. His tone was urgent. "I think I found the trail," he said. "What trail?" "The money. Claire and Mark opened a joint account last month, the same day your online banking was restricted. I got the transfer records. It's your money." My knees went weak. "Are you sure?" "Positive. The timestamps line up exactly with the forged filings." He emailed screenshots, transaction IDs, amounts, bank names, numbers that mirrored every missing withdrawal. "Dana can file an emergency motion to freeze it," he said. "You'll need to sign tonight." I drove to her office with Helen riding shotgun, clutching my folder labeled proof like it was oxygen. Dana printed the forms, slid them across the desk. "Once the freeze order is signed, no one touches a cent," she said. "We'll file it first thing in the morning." She looked at me, eyes sharp but kind. "Eleanor, you're doing everything right. Most people collapse before this point." "I'm not most people," I said. 2 days later, the judge issued the emergency freeze. All transfers from accounts under my name were halted pending investigation. For the first time, Claire couldn't move my money. The relief was physical, a loosened knot in the chest. But peace didn't last long. That night, the phone rang. No ID. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice filled the room. "Mom, I hope you're happy. You've embarrassed me in court. Do you really think they'll believe you? You sound paranoid." A pause. "I still love you, but you're making a fool of yourself." I saved the message, labeled it Voicemail 1, Intimidation. The week before the next hearing, I started sleeping with the lights on. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. I kept a flashlight and my notebook by the bed, ready to document whatever happened next. Helen checked on me daily. She'd bring casserole, pretend not to notice my unwashed coffee cups, then quietly rinse them in the sink. One afternoon, she said, "I talked to Paul. His article's coming together. He's calling it Guardianship for Profit." I nodded slowly. If it helps one person avoid this, it's worth it. The second hearing date was set for Friday the 28th. That morning, Dana met me outside the courthouse, briefcase in hand. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be." We walked past the reporters, Paul among them, notebook ready, and into the courtroom. Claire sat alone this time. No Mark. Her hands trembled in her lap. Dana rose first. "Your Honor," she began, "since our last session, we obtained new evidence of financial exploitation. My client's bank records show unauthorized transfers to a joint account owned by the petitioner and her former spouse." The judge lifted an eyebrow. Dana continued, projecting screenshots onto the monitor. "Here are the dates of transfer and the matching times Mrs. Brooks's online access was revoked." Even from across the room, I saw Claire flinch. "Ms. Brooks," the judge said quietly, "would you like to explain these transactions?" Claire's voice was barely audible. "It was Mark. He said it was temporary. I didn't know." "Yet you filed these petitions under oath." She nodded miserably. "I was scared for her. He told me this was the only way to keep her safe. The judge set down her pen. Ignorance is not a defense to fraud. Dana added, "Your Honor, we also have Dr. Lynn's sworn affidavit and email confirming forgery of his signature. That alone invalidates the medical basis of this guardianship." The gavel fell. Petition dismissed. Power of attorney revoked. Court orders investigation into financial misconduct of Mr. Mark Harper and Ms. Claire Brooks. The room buzzed. I sat still, every nerve quiet. Dana touched my arm. "You won." I shook my head. "No, I survived." Outside the courthouse, microphones and flashes waited. Paul stepped forward, voice steady but gentle. "Mrs. Brooks, any comment on the verdict?" I looked past the cameras to where Claire stood alone on the steps. She looked small, like a child caught in a storm she built herself. I turned back to the reporters. "Trust," I said, "is the most dangerous currency we own." That night, I made tea and sat by the window watching the headlights slide down Maple Drive. The folder of proof sat on the table, edges frayed from being handled too much. I should have felt peace. Instead, I felt hollow. Victory isn't the same as healing. When the phone rang again later, I let it ring twice before answering. It was Dana. "The investigation has formally opened," she said. "Mark will face charges for forgery and wire fraud. Claire is cooperating." "Cooperating?" I asked, as in turning everything over. I sat in silence a moment, staring at the steam from my cup. That should make me feel better. "Does it?" "No," I said softly. "I just wanted her to stop." The days that followed were a strange quiet. No calls, no letters, just sunlight and ordinary noise. The refrigerator's hum, the clack of mail through the slot. But even peace felt fragile, as if the walls had memory. I cleaned out drawers, changed my passwords, added a verbal PIN to every account. At the pharmacy, I told the technician, "No discussions with anyone unless I sign consent." She nodded, serious. Little barriers, quiet defenses. One afternoon, I found an old photo of Claire, 12 years old, grinning beside her father with a puppy in her arms. For a moment, I felt something like grief for a person still alive. I slid the photo into the folder behind the court papers. Not for evidence, just for context. The weeks passed. Paul's article went live online and spread fast. Guardianship fraud, when family takes the keys to your life. Thousands of comments poured in from people with stories just like mine. Reading them was equal parts comfort and horror. Elder fraud wasn't rare. It was a quiet epidemic. I printed some of the letters and kept them in a folder labeled "Not Alone." Every few days, I opened it to remind myself that survival could mean something bigger than one court case. Then, one morning in June, a white envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, my name typed at the top. Formal notification. State v. Mark Harper. Hearing date confirmed. At the bottom, in ink that was too familiar, was a short handwritten note. He used me too. C. I stared at it for a long time. It was the first apology that didn't sound like a performance, but I wasn't ready to answer yet. I folded the note and placed it in the back of my notebook beneath the last entry. Proof of forgery. Complete. The day after the petition was dismissed, I woke before the sun and lay still, listening to the house breathe. The water heater ticked, the old oak scraped the bedroom window, and somewhere in the gutter, the sparrows resumed their morning argument. Ordinary sounds. For weeks, they'd been drowned by fear. Now I heard them again, clear as a dial, finely tuned. I brewed coffee and carried it to the kitchen table where the proof folder sat. Edges frayed, corners soft, paper smelling like toner and relief. I'd meant to put it away, but each time I touched the cover, a small voice in me said, "Not yet. Some scars want air before they knit." I started with practical things because practicality is the rope you throw yourself when feelings try to drag you under. I changed the locks. I called the bank and added a verbal password only I would know. I set two-factor authentication on every account so a small string of numbers could remind both the machines and me. I am still here. At the pharmacy, I asked the technician to put a yellow flag on my file. No third-party discussions without signed consent. She nodded with a seriousness beyond her years and typed carefully, like each keystroke nailed a board in place. Dana called around noon. "The state attorney's office is opening a formal case," she said. "They'll likely charge Mark with forgery and wire fraud. Claire is cooperating." "Cooperating," I repeated, tasting the word. "She's turned over messages, drafts, file timestamps. It helps." "Does helping them help me?" "It already has," Dana said, "and there's more we can do. They'll ask whether you want to read a victim statement at sentencing." "I don't know if I can." "You don't have to," she said gently, "but sometimes saying it out loud is what lets the body put it down." After the call, I stood at the sink, fingertips pruny under hot water, rinsing a mug that didn't need another rinse. Winning in court had given me back my name, but not yet my quiet. Quiet, I realized, wasn't something a judge could grant. It was a habit you rebuilt. I made a list on a clean page of my legal pad. Locks changed. Done bank PIN and passphrase. Done pharmacy consent note. Done phone plan, moved to in-person carrier. Tomorrow, car insurance. Verbal. Password. Call each checkmark made me an inch taller. That afternoon, Helen arrived with armfuls of chrysanthemums and the kind of cheer a best friend smuggles in like medicine. She rinsed the vase without asking, set the flowers in the window where October light made the petals look like small suns. "Paul says his piece goes live this week," she said. "He kept your name, with your permission, right?" "Yes," I said. "If my story keeps one person from handing over their life, it's worth being seen." We sat with tea while the house remembered how to be a house and not a courtroom annex. Across the street, the neighbor's boy dribbled a basketball. The steady thump and rim chuckle made a rhythm my nerves learned to follow. Helen squeezed my hand. "You did it, Ellie." "I survived it," I said. "Now I have to live after it." The article landed on Tuesday. Guardianship fraud, when family takes the keys to your life. By evening, my inbox was thick with messages. Some were 3 sentences, others 3 pages. A son in Phoenix wrote that his sister added herself to their mother's accounts for convenience and then forgot to stop being convenient. A widow in Ohio wrote that her niece had accidentally changed the mailing address for her pension. "Is it still fraud if they say they're helping?" she asked. I made a folder labeled "Not Alone," printed the letters that felt like hands reaching through the screen, and slid them inside. They helped. The library called the next day. They'd seen Paul's piece and were piloting a weekly legal clinic for seniors. "Would you be willing to sit in and share what safeguards helped you most?" the director asked. "I'm not a lawyer," I said. "You're exactly what we need," she replied. "Someone who knows where the doors are." On Thursday, I sat at a folding table under fluorescent lights with 2 law students and a retired judge who missed the bench in a way only judges can. People came in with envelopes with questions, with the embarrassment that sticks to you when trouble arrived wearing your last name. We handed out a 1-page checklist titled, "Safeguards You Can Put in Place Today," and a card that read, "You are allowed to ask your own child." 4 questions. Why do you need this access? What problem are we solving? What do I lose if I say yes? What changes if I say no? People chuckled at the title, then wrote the questions down carefully, as if each line were a permission slip to themselves. A woman in a red windbreaker with a tremor in her left hand squeezed my arm. "I thought it was just me," she whispered. "It's not," I said. "Being careful doesn't mean you're suspicious. It means you're brave." I drove home that night with the library's leftover coffee sloshing in a paper cup, the car smelling like old books and resolve. At a red light, my phone buzzed. A new email from the state attorney's office. Pretrial. Conference set. Restitution under review. A second line beneath it. Victim statement. Optional. Reply if you'd like to be heard. I pulled over in the grocery lot and stared at the screen. I imagined standing in a courtroom again, telling the truth to a room that included a man who could forge a signature as neatly as he could shrug. I imagined my voice steady, my hands not. I typed, "Yes, I would like to speak." Then I drove home and slept for 6 uninterrupted hours for the first time in months. The next week became a ritual of small repairs. I mended the quilt my mother started in 1968, the one with turquoise stars and one mismatched yellow square that clashed and somehow made the whole thing sing. I sanded the arm of the living room chair where one winter's worth of worry had rubbed the finish thin. I cooked a pot of beans the way my husband liked them and ate them for 3 days, spooning in a little more cumin each time until the taste matched some memory I hadn't realized I missed. Claire texted twice during those days. The sentences were short, careful, as if she'd replaced punctuation with eggshells. "I'm giving them everything, Mom. I'm sorry." I stared at the screen and felt 2 truths press against each other like weather fronts. You can love a person, and you can also love your latch. I replied, "Thank you for cooperating. No more." Dana called to prep me for the statement. "We keep it simple," she said. "What was taken, what was harmed, and what you want the court to understand about repair." "What about forgiveness?" I asked. "Forgiveness is yours," she said. "The court handles accountability. They're related, but they don't have to arrive on the same day." I wrote the statement at the kitchen table with a pen that left a good, honest line. Draft 1 spit. Draft 2 wept. Draft 3 told the truth without grinding it into the floor. "You didn't just take my money. You took my place in my own life. You made me knock on the door of my name and ask if I could still come in. I am here to say I still belong to myself." I folded the page and slid it into the proof folder behind Dr. Lynn's affidavit. The folder had become less a weapon and more a record of a woman who had insisted on remaining real. On Wednesday, a thin official envelope arrived. The state attorney's letterhead. Proposed plea. Mark would plead to reduced counts, pay restitution on a schedule, and accept time in state custody. There was a box I could check. Victim opposes plea, and a second box. Victim does not oppose. I read the details twice. Does not oppose wasn't the same as forgive. I checked the box and signed. Justice could wear sensible shoes. I took a walk after mailing it. A steady fall wind had combed the leaves into small drifts against the curb. Across from the park, I paused at the bench where I'd once watched Claire teach her son to ride a bike, my hands Palmer method tight on that memory's edge. I don't know how long I stood there, but when I turned back toward home, the ache in my legs felt like proof that the body, at least, still knew where I lived. The library clinic asked me to open the next session with just 5 minutes. I wore a blue sweater because color counts when you're trying to be more than what happened to you. I told the story without the names and handed a stranger a flashlight made of bullet points. Keep copies, set passwords, demand explanations in writing, and call the bank in person before you change a thing. Afterward, a man in a denim jacket said, "My mother's caregiver offered to simplify things. We didn't realize simplification meant disappearing $3,000. Undo what you can," I said. Apologize for what you can't. Start today. When I got home, a small parcel waited on the porch. No return address. Inside, a single brass house key on a plain ring and a note in handwriting I knew too well. "I don't want to hold anything of yours that you don't want me to." C. I turned the key over in my palm. It was the copy I'd given her when she moved into her first apartment. Years that feel so near until you try to touch them. I set it in the little dish by the sink where we keep lone screws and the good matches. I didn't know yet whether I would throw it away or keep it. Not all decisions need a verdict the day they arrive. That night, I reread my victim statement and made one change. I added a sentence at the end. Repair is not the same as return. Some things paid back stay, gone. I am learning to live with what remains. I slept with the bedroom window cracked and dreamed of paper turning into cloth, into something warm that covered what it needed to and left the face for air. 2 mornings later, the phone rang. An unfamiliar local number. I almost let it go to the machine, then answered. Mrs. Brooks. The voice was measured, official. This is Assistant State's Attorney Nguyen. We have a sentencing date for Mr. Harper, Friday the 12th. Your daughter has agreed to testify to the chain of events and has submitted corroborating records. I exhaled slowly. And my statement? Filed. The judge read it. She may ask you to read it aloud. I thanked her and set the phone down in the cradle as if it might break. At lunch, Helen came by with egg salad and a bag of kettle chips. When I told her the date, she nodded, one of those nods that says, "We knew this was coming and we can do hard things." "Wear the navy blazer," she said, "the one that fits like a decision." I laughed for the first time that day. That evening, the house felt steady under my feet. I pulled the quilt into my lap and finished the crooked star I'd been avoiding, the one whose points never met right. I stitched the gap anyway, closed the seam, and realized my hands had finally stopped shaking. The doorbell rang. I froze, needle paused in midair, the thread A, thin line between before and after. Through the peephole, I saw Claire on the stoop, hair pulled back, hands empty, the careful posture of someone asking to be allowed to be small. I didn't open the door. I turned the deadbolt and spoke through the wood. "Ring the bell once," I said, "and wait to be invited in." She did. I unlatched the chain. Claire stood on the porch in her gray sweater, hair pulled into a loose knot. When I opened the door, she didn't step inside right away. "I just wanted to say," she began, "thank you for not opposing the plea." "I didn't do it for you," I said. "I did it for closure." She nodded, eyes flicking to the quilt folded on the arm of the chair. "Is that the one Grandma started?" "Yes. It's beautiful," she said softly. Then silence. A silence shaped by all the things neither of us could take back. "Do you need anything, Mom? Groceries? Rides?" "No, Claire," I said evenly. "I have everything I need, my name, my freedom, and the truth." She nodded once and left without looking back. When the door clicked shut, the house exhaled. I leaned against it for a long time before turning the lock. Love, I realized, can survive disappointment, but not deceit. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for Friday, 9 a.m. sharp. I ironed the navy blazer Helen called the decision jacket and pinned my silver brooch, my husband's gift on our 25th anniversary. Helen picked me up at 8 with a thermos of coffee and quiet strength. Neither of us spoke much during the drive. Inside the courtroom, everything felt smaller than I remembered. The benches closer, the lights harsher. Mark sat at the defense table in a suit a size too big, his face paler, thinner. Claire sat 2 rows back, hands folded like a penitent schoolgirl. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The clerk read the charges: forgery, wire fraud, financial exploitation of an elder. Mark's attorney entered a guilty plea under the agreement. He'd serve 2 years, pay restitution from any wages earned, and forfeit access to all my financial accounts permanently. Then the judge looked at me. "Mrs. Brooks, would you like to read your victim statement?" My knees wavered, but Dana's hand steadied me. I stood, unfolded the page, and began. "Your Honor, what was taken from me wasn't just money. It was the right to be believed. My daughter told the world I was losing my mind, and this man helped her prove it, with lies. They didn't just forge a signature. They forged a version of me that didn't exist. I was alive, aware, and competent, yet I had to fight for the privilege of being myself again." I took a breath. The court can decide his punishment. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because people like me, parents, widows, the careful ones, need to know that losing trust doesn't mean losing yourself. You can rebuild from the wreckage. You can still hold your name steady, in your own hands. The judge listened without interruption. When I finished, I folded the paper carefully and returned to my seat. Mark didn't look at me. Claire wiped her eyes with a tissue that wasn't nearly enough. The judge spoke calmly. Mr. Harper, your actions represent not only a crime of fraud, but of deep moral cowardice. You preyed on trust, the very bond that holds families together. The court accepts your plea and imposes the agreed sentence. The gavel struck once, and just like that, it was over. Outside, Helen let out a shaky breath. You did it, she said. I said it, I corrected. Doing it will take longer. Claire approached slowly. I'm sorry, she whispered. I studied her face, the daughter who once used to beg for one more bedtime story. Then be better, I said quietly. That's all that's left. I turned and walked toward the parking lot without looking back. The morning sun was low and clear, catching the brass of the courthouse doors like the flash of a warning and a blessing at once. That weekend, I didn't touch the proof folder. I made soup instead, chicken and rice, her favorite when she was little, and watched the steam twist upward. The smell filled the house like something clean, reclaiming space. Monday brought a new letter, this one from the state restitution office. It listed payment schedules, forms to sign, and contact information. I filled everything out neatly, signed Eleanor M. Brooks in steady ink, and realized that my signature no longer felt like a defense. It felt like a declaration. Helen stopped by later with coffee and pie. She looked around the kitchen, now uncluttered of all the chaos that had filled it for months. You going to keep volunteering at that clinic? Yes, I said. It's the only thing that makes this mess mean something. She smiled. You're turning pain into paperwork. That's my kind of redemption. The following Tuesday at the library, attendance doubled. More faces, more stories. A retired mail carrier whose daughter helped him refinance his house and then vanished. A widow whose son borrowed her car title just for a week. I listened, wrote down names of pro bono attorneys, and handed out copies of the 4 questions. After the session, a woman about my age lingered behind. Her name was Janet. Soft voice, nervous smile. My son added himself to my accounts, she said quietly. He said it was for my protection. Now he won't give me access. I gave her Dana's card. He's counting on you to feel ashamed, I said. Don't. Shame's his job, not yours. She gripped my hand, eyes wet. Thank you. I thought it was just me. It never is, I said. A week later, Paul called. His article had been nominated for a regional journalism award. He laughed when I congratulated him. It's your story that mattered, he said. I just had the keyboard. I hope it helps, I told him. It already has. The state's setting up a hotline for guardianship abuse. They're using your case as training material. I hung up and let the news settle. For the first time, the idea of being a case didn't sting. It felt useful. In April, Claire called again. I'm attending counseling, she said. Boundary repair, they call it. I listened, silent. I'm not asking for anything, she continued, but if you ever want to have tea, I'll come to you, and I'll ring the bell first. That last sentence caught me. Ring the bell first, a promise disguised as manners. Thank you, I said. I mean it, she whispered. I'll wait until you invite me in. When we hung up, I stood in the hallway for a long time staring at the front door, the key dish gleaming faintly on the counter. Sometimes love isn't a bridge, it's a door, and respect is learning to wait on the right side of it. In May, the first restitution check arrived. It wasn't the money that mattered, it was the header line. Payee, Eleanor Brooks. Seeing my name printed correctly again made me laugh out loud. I pinned the stub to the bulletin board above the sink as proof that the world could occasionally correct itself. That weekend, Helen and I went back to the diner where it had all started. The same cracked red booths, the same slow waitress who remembered our usual. Helen raised her coffee. To the woman who taught her daughter and the court how to underestimate her. I clinked my mug against hers. To the friend who never did. The waitress smiled as she passed. Celebrating something? Freedom, Helen said. The waitress grinned. Best reason there is. On the way home, I stopped by the cemetery. The grass was thick with spring. I brushed leaves off my husband's headstone and traced his name with my thumb. We fixed it, I told him softly. The house, the bank, even the story. I laughed once, still working on the daughter part. The wind moved gently through the maples, and for a moment it felt like an answer. The library clinic grew. By summer, we had a waiting list. We called ourselves the Tuesday Proof Circle. Every meeting ended with the same line, written on the whiteboard in red marker. Proof isn't power. Persistence is. People started saying it back to me like a prayer. One day, Janet, the woman with the controlling son, came in beaming. "Got my accounts back," she said. "He's furious." I hugged her. Let him be. Fury fades faster than shame. A few weeks later, Claire came by. She rang once, waited. When I opened the door, she held a jar of honey. "For tea," she said simply. I nodded and stepped aside. She entered slowly, glancing around as if the walls might object. We sat at the kitchen table, 2 cups, 2 spoons, the hum of the refrigerator like a quiet metronome of truce. We didn't talk about court or forgiveness. We talked about her job, her son's new school, the dog she'd rescued, normal things. When she stood to leave, she said, "Can I come again sometime?" "Call first," I said gently. She smiled. "I will." After she left, I poured the leftover tea down the sink, rinsed the cups, and realized I wasn't trembling. That was progress enough. One evening in late summer, I found the proof folder while reorganizing drawers. For a moment I hesitated, hand hovering over it. Then I opened the filing cabinet, slid it behind tax returns and furnace warranties, and closed the drawer. It didn't need to be near to be true. I walked to the porch, sat down with a slice of pie and the cool night air. Across the street, porch lights blinked on one by one. For months, I'd feared every sound outside my door. Now the world sounded like itself again. Crickets, the low rumble of a passing car, the soft sigh of wind through the maple branches. I took a bite of pie and whispered to no one in particular, "Peace is paperwork you sign with your habits." For the first time in a long time, I believed it. 1 year later, almost to the day, I woke before dawn. Habit, not insomnia. The clock read 5:47, the same time I used to open the store back when mornings smelled like sawdust and coffee. Outside, the street lamps flickered off one by one, surrendering to the pale wash of sunrise. The house was still, quiet in a way that no longer felt empty. I padded into the kitchen, started the kettle, and stood watching steam rise from the spout, that familiar whisper of purpose. On the counter sat a postcard from Claire, mailed last week. "Mom, I got promoted. The clinic's offering free elder legal aid now. Thought you'd like that. Love, C." No promises, no dramatics, just progress written in neat script. That was enough. The kettle whistled softly. I poured the water, stirred honey into my tea, and carried the mug to the porch. The maple trees out front were full and green again. Birds chattered like gossipers who'd seen it all, but still marveled every morning that the world kept showing up. I breathed in the scent of warm earth and damp wood and realized how rare it is to be grateful for ordinary peace. After the sentencing, the world hadn't transformed overnight. There were still forms to sign, calls to return, passwords to change, nights when dreams came dressed as courtrooms. But slowly the noise faded. The mailbox filled with normal things again. Coupons, newsletters, handwritten notes from neighbors. People started asking me for advice about wills, about powers of attorney, about how to have hard conversations before trouble started. That's how the Proof Circle grew from a Tuesday night meeting into something larger. We moved it from the library basement to the community center, where the chairs didn't squeak and the coffee pot didn't leak. I started keeping a white binder labeled Resources, full of state hotlines, sample forms, and a list of pro bono lawyers who actually called back. When newcomers arrived, nervous and embarrassed, I'd start with the same line every time. Being careful doesn't mean you're suspicious. It means you've learned where to put your trust. People began to stay after meetings, talking long past closing. It felt like building a wall of hands, each story another brick. Sometimes I'd catch myself smiling at how ordinary courage looked when it finally settled in. A widower asking his son to step off the bank account, a woman revoking a power of attorney she'd signed in fear, someone learning that no can be a full sentence without apology. I'd watch them leave lighter, and I'd think, we're proof that surviving isn't the same as being finished. In June, Paul visited again. He just received the journalism award for his article and wanted to celebrate with what he called the hero of the story. I laughed. Heroes don't need nap schedules, I said. He grinned. They earn them. We sat on the porch with lemonade and the kind of quiet that comes from work well done. He told me the state legislature was reviewing reforms to tighten guardianship filings, mandatory doctor verification, direct witness calls, better transparency. Your case made the docket, he said. They call it the Brooks Clause. I nearly spilled my drink. My name's in a law? Technically an amendment, he said. But yes, you changed the rule book. The idea landed slowly. I hadn't meant to make history. I just hadn't wanted to disappear. But maybe that's how most change begins, with someone who simply refuses to vanish. Later that summer, Claire and her son stopped by. He was taller now, voice deeper, the same shy eyes he'd had as a boy. He carried a grocery bag full of peaches. Mom says you like these, he said awkwardly. I do, I said. They bruise easily, though. He smiled a little. So do we. We sat outside eating slices of peach over napkins, juice dripping down our wrists. Claire mostly listened while he told me about college applications and a robotics competition. When they stood to leave, she hugged me lightly. No grand speeches, just warmth and space. That was enough, too. After they left, I wrote in my notebook, not under proof this time, but a new section I'd started called Peace. Under the date, I wrote, Healing isn't forgetting. It's remembering without reopening. By autumn, I'd found a new rhythm. Mornings for coffee and quiet reading, afternoons for the clinic and errands, evenings for writing, short essays about autonomy, trust, and the quiet bravery of ordinary people. Paul encouraged me to share them. Start a column, he said. Call it Signed by Me. So I did. Each piece began with a story and ended with a checklist, because I'd learned that wisdom only counts if it's printable. The first article, How to Protect Your Future Without Losing Your Family, reached more readers than I expected. Emails poured in, people sending thanks, updates, and sometimes just relief. One line kept repeating in different forms. You made me feel seen. That sentence felt like the real verdict, the one I'd waited for all along. In October, the Proof Circle held its first community seminar. We rented the church hall and invited speakers. Dana, the assistant state attorney, and a local banker who explained digital scams in plain English. Over 100 people came. I stood at the podium under fluorescent lights, microphones squealing once before settling. My hands didn't shake this time. Last year, I began, I sat in this same town thinking I was losing my mind because people I loved said I was. Turns out I was only losing my patience, and maybe a little too much trust. Laughter, soft and knowing, rippled through the crowd. I continued. You don't have to wait for a crisis to protect yourself. Ask questions now. Put things in writing. And if anyone ever tells you you're confused when you know you're clear, write it down anyway. Truth has a way of aging well. When it was over, the crowd stood and clapped. It wasn't applause for drama. It was gratitude in motion, an entire room saying, "We understand." As winter approached again, the house carried a different kind of silence, one that felt earned. I'd repaired the armchair, repainted the porch rail, replaced the burnout bulbs. Small restorations, each one a sentence in the language of reclaiming. Some nights, when the air turned cold enough for the windows to fog, I'd sit by the heater and read the notebook from the start. The entries from those first weeks, shaky handwriting, dates scribbled in panic, looked like someone else's life, but they were mine, and I kept them to remember that calm doesn't erase chaos. It grows out of it like grass through a sidewalk crack. I never threw away the proof folder. It lived quietly in the cabinet behind the tax files, beside a new folder labeled Peace. Both mattered. The evidence of what went wrong and the evidence of what survived. A year after everything, I drove to the lake on a whim. The water was glassy, catching clouds like secrets reflected back. I sat on a bench with a thermos of tea, listening to geese cut the sky. A younger woman sat down a few feet away, phone pressed to her ear, voice trembling. "I don't know if he's lying," she said into the receiver. "He says it's for my protection." Her words floated toward me like déjà vu. When she hung up, I turned slightly and said, "If someone says they're protecting you, make sure you're not the thing they're protecting themselves from." She looked startled, then nodded slowly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Write it down," I said. "Start there." She smiled faintly. "I will." As she walked away, I realized maybe that's how legacy works, not through laws or articles, but through strangers who overhear the right sentence at the right time. Back home, evenings settled soft and blue. I made tea, turned on the porch light, and opened the window so the smell of autumn could wander in. Across the street, the neighbor's boy, now taller, confident, was teaching a younger kid how to dribble a basketball. The thup-thup sound echoed against the quiet like punctuation marks, reminding me that life, for all its turns, keeps choosing to continue. I smiled, picked up my pen, and wrote the final line in my notebook. Proof is what you show the world. Persistence is what you show yourself. Then I closed the cover, set it on the table beside the empty teacup, and turned off the light.